Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted and privileged to welcome a friend from Japan, Sapna Advani. Sapna, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Ashutosh. It's a privilege to be here.
Thank you. Sapna is a very accomplished professional. She's the founder and managing director of MasihWhite Private Limited. Sapna is also a CEO coach and a leadership and culture consultant. So Sapna, let's start by asking you, what are the different kinds of work that you do?
Thanks, Ashutosh. I do four things primarily right now. So I do CEO coaching. I do consulting around culture. So I help clients to diagnose and curate their culture around their aspirational culture and values. And I do leadership consulting, where the third thing I do is leadership programs for senior leadership teams of companies, trying to make them high-performance teams. Yeah. And the fourth thing I do is I work with European universities to create and deliver Asian leadership programs for them, so that they and their students have an idea of what Asia looks like in terms of leadership.
Amazing. What a broad spectrum of work that you do. And when I was reading about you, you also said that your current focus is leading in a hybrid workplace. Mm-hmm. What does that mean?
Right now, Ashutosh, as you know even better than me, CEOs are worried about so many different things. But the chief thing they are concerned about is how fast the external environment is changing, correct, but also how fast the workplace is changing. And so with a hybrid workplace where things have not really gone back to pre-pandemic reality, but a new reality, they are finding new challenges on how to lead in this new workplace, where some employees are working remotely, some are in the office, some things are happening in person, some are not. It's very hard for them to find their balance and to reinvent and refocus their leadership on meeting these challenges of the new workplace. So I am very right now concerned with issues around that. And I'm coaching a lot on issues around that, how to lead in a hybrid workplace.
Oh, wonderful. So now let's move to your avatar as a coach. Mm-hmm. You say that you work with CEOs. My question is, why do you focus only on CEOs?
So it happened over time, Ashutosh. As my coaching journey started, at first, it was in Japan, and almost 15 plus years ago. And I was coaching all levels of the organization for multinationals, for Japanese companies. And then I set up my base in Singapore in 2011, and I started to then expand my coaching practice. And as I went, I realized that my vision and my mission is to help organizations to transform. And the best way to transform is to transform their leadership and their culture. And this belief of mine has become cemented over the years, that these are the two pillars of change in the organization, the leadership and the culture. And these are also closely interrelated, because culture, in fact, begins with the leaders. So having realized that through my journey, I also, in a slightly selfish manner, realized that my own professional goals would not be fulfilled and my mission would not be fulfilled unless I worked with the actual change makers in the organization. And so while change can be made at every level of the organization, and everyone is a leader in their own right, the CEOs have a unique ability to make change happen very fast. And as the external environment moves faster and faster, there is a need for commitment and change from the top, and cultural shift from the top. So all of these realizations over time brought me to this conclusion that working with CEOs would help me to help organizations better, and that it would be a very effective way to help organizations transform at speed.
Very interesting. And, when I met you in Singapore, and from what I've read about you, you have such a unique kind of background. studied in India, worked in Japan, lived in Singapore, now shuttling between Japan and India, coaching, and then Singapore, coaching people from around the world. How has your background supported your coaching philosophy, your style, and your values?
Thank you for this question, Ashutosh. What a great question. I think uh, I think everyone is shaped everyone is shaped by their background, their upbringing, their personal journey. I think this is the same for me, really. My upbringing, first and foremost, my parents were both educators. I was raised on a college campus in a very academic environment. I saw them day to day live their values. I think that really helped. They understood young people. My dad was a professor, my mom was a high school teacher. So the downside of this is that you can't get away with anything with parents like that as a young person. But the upside was that they understood young people so well that they allowed me to get away with some things. And so they had the wisdom to do that, and I thought we benefited a lot from that. I benefited a lot from that, to learn my lessons on how to work with people, how to coach. In fact, my first lessons in coaching came from my parents, so that was very important. They lived their values. They taught us the value of respect and responsibility and academic rigor and perseverance, and most importantly, integrity. So all of this became ingrained. So family always is the first influence. My husband, later in life, and he is a tech industry leader, and to watch his level of focus and perseverance, and the idea that he always is ready to try new things, I think that has influenced me a lot. So all these influences, along with that, of course, my own professional journey, my first corporate job, I reported to a CEO. I was so young. I had no business reporting directly to the CEO, but I was in charge of setting up a whole department in the organization. And so I ended up at the table where all around me were very senior, very seasoned leaders. And this was the table where all the organizational decisions were made. So watching that helped me a lot. It influenced my thinking even to this day on what effective leadership can do to transform an organization, what effective leaders can do to shape the culture and set a culture in place in the organization. And I was able to see end to end the entire cycle, from decision making, from the discussion, pre-decision discussions, all the way to their impact down the line on the organization. So seeing that the breadth of leadership impact actually was an invaluable learning for me so early in my career. So that really helped me in my own coaching, and continues to help me today. And the third thing was, I think the third influence I would say is my cross-cultural journey, because like you mentioned earlier, I have lived and worked in India, in Singapore, in Japan. Japan is my home. Singapore is my work home, in a sense. So all of these factors have allowed me to have kind of a broader sense of reality. And I feel like today, as a coach and as a consultant, when I talk to my clients, I feel like I'm able to cut through the cultural layers and quickly get to the core of the issue, because of the breadth of some of this background. And it has also helped me to take this to my coaching sessions, and I talk to my coachees about this. There are many ways to solve a problem, because culturally, I have seen every culture has a different response to the same situation. So there are many ways to solve a problem. So I do talk to my coachees. Look at a situation in many different ways. If one thing doesn't work, use another approach. Don't be afraid to change your approach, and have many tools in your toolbox.
Fascinating. My next question to you is that, you just gave me the example of working with a CEO, and you work with so many different people. How have you been shaped by people in your life, and how are they influencing you as a coach today?
It has been so much of my background that goes into, I think every single day that as a coach, I feel like so much goes into my coaching that comes from my background and the people I know. I'm constantly influenced by the people I meet day to day. Of course, my parents, they brought education and heart together into one whole, and taught me that education is not the only thing in life, even though they were educators. That being educated doesn't mean degrees. It means having wisdom, educating yourself on the human side of things. So I'm able to use that in my coaching, and I really enjoy that. I feel the boss I talked about, my first corporate boss, I learned from him that, during tough times is the most important time to stick to your values and to be true to who you are. And that is something, again, that I discuss with my coaches. These are tough times right now. Things are changing around us. And it's even more important that leaders stick to their values and who they are and bring that authenticity to their leadership, and allows them to change in other areas if they remain true to their values. So these are some of the things. But most of all, I feel I continue to be influenced and inspired by my coaches, because they bring so much of themselves to the sessions. They bring their strengths. They are creative, talented individuals, and they bring their strengths. But it's also this great strength in being vulnerable that they bring to the table. And I really learn from that. They never stop learning. They're always open to ideas, open to listening, and I feel very inspired by that. I feel inspired by leaders such as you, Ashutosh, who have you reached the peak of your professional accomplishments and your success, and you didn't just kick back and relax and say, okay, I'm done. You stayed in the game, and you are now giving back and helping other leaders to develop. So holding the door open for other leaders is something that you inspire me to continue doing. So this is how I feel. I'm very fortunate because I have like an ongoing source of inspiration in my work.
Fabulous. My next question to you is on culture. You again have worked in different countries, and culturally each country is very, very different. As you just mentioned, your home is Japan, your work home is Singapore, you are of Indian origin. How does culture impact coaching, especially in countries like Japan?
That's a great question. I think even the approach to coaching, the acceptance of coaching is a very cultural issue, I think, in Asia. So when I moved to Japan 20 years ago, the idea of coaching was alien at that time. There was no such thing as coaching. In fact, even the idea of training, we had to sell the idea of training before we sold training in Japan. So that was quite interesting, because Japan had this on-the-job learning, idea and principles. It was very hard for them to understand why somebody external would know anything more than my seniors might know about being successful in this organization. So that whole idea. But over time, that changed. And so I remember when I started coaching in Japan, the first thing that happened was, oh, can you do one-on-one coaching for our CEO? And one-on-one training, sorry. They used to call it one-on-one training for our CEO. And I was very intrigued by that, because they realized senior leaders can't be put into training programs with the other groups. And so what do you do? So can you do one-on-one training? And over time, of course, that has evolved. And now executive coaching is quite the norm in Japan. I think what has been now the situation is that culturally, the Japanese are undergoing a lot of change and flux in their leadership environment, because all these Japanese leaders, while a generational shift is happening, it's still in process. So a lot of the senior Japanese leaders are realizing that what has worked for them for the last 3 or 4 decades may not be the style that works for them going forward, because now they are leading fast globalizing or already globalized Japanese organizations. And so this tension between the way things were, the way things need to be now, is coming out in coaching rooms, I think, across Japan. This is something that I talk about a lot with my coaches. So as the generational shift happens in Japan, like in other parts of the world, things will change. As of now, there is this challenge, and it does impact coaching, and in fact, coaching is impacting that interface very much, and making things hopefully easier for Japanese leaders in their adaptation.
Fascinating, fascinating. And when you look at the younger leaders,
Mhm,
the millennials, the Gen Zs, they're now all reaching leadership roles in different
mhm.
organizations. What is your perspective on coaching millennials and younger leaders as compared to the older
Mhm.
leaders?
That's a very good question again, because I think with younger leaders,
Hmm.
they have so many strengths. I'm very much impressed by what they bring to the table. They
Hmm.
have this singular focus on innovation and ideas, and
Hmm.
the fact that ideas can come from anywhere. They're not sold on the hierarchy in the organization. They are not sold on the trappings of leadership, the titles and the money. They're very focused on the environment and
Hmm.
sustainability issues. So I'm very impressed with all of this. I think if there's some advice I would give them in a coaching session, it would be about, and I do advise startup CEOs, in
Hmm.
fact, founders and CEOs, and I talk to them about the importance of two aspects. One is awareness.
Hmm.
So spending a lot of time on getting to know themselves, because uh, it is very important that they do that in order to lead others and lead their organization. And the second thing is that they have, I think they have all the makings of it, but
Hmm.
how to put everything together into
Hmm.
a coherent culture for their organizations, how to create culture right the first time, because
Hmm.
changing and reshaping culture is a painful process and
Hmm.
a slow process.
Hmm.
So getting it right the first time is important. So that is the kind of thing I would like them to focus on:
Hmm.
self-awareness, self-development, and culture shaping.
Fascinating. So I'm going to now ask you a couple of questions, which I say are personal questions, and then I'll come to my last question. Uh, Given the amount of different things that you've done,
Mhm.
what would you say are three key milestones in your life or your
Mhm.
career?
Um, One, I think, was to quit my first job,
Hmm.
which was, not a corporate job. So to quit it. The second thing was to quit my corporate job
Hmm.
and get into consulting. So the first one was to quit my first job, get into corporate jobs. The second was to quit the corporate jobs, get into
Hmm.
consulting. I think the third milestone, Ashutosh, was to not quit what I'm doing right now.
Okay. Okay.
There were times, when we start, there are times when you feel like you wake up and say, am I doing the right thing? And those were early days, and I'm very thankful. I remember those mornings and I remember them as milestones. So
Hmm.
not quitting was important.
Yep. Not quitting itself is a very big milestone. So thank you. Uh, my next question is, what are some of the core values you believe in? And I'm
Mhm.
asking you this question from the perspective that you have, you're one of the few people I know who has lived and worked in three different cultures: India, Singapore, and Japan, which
Mhm.
have a very, very unique set of their own thoughts, their own values. So I'd love to get to
Mhm.
understand from you, what are some of the core values you believe
I do believe that self-belief is the number one
in? Hmm.
strength anyone can have. And
Okay.
and that's one of my values. You have to believe in yourself before anybody will believe in your idea or
Mm.
anyone will believe in you.
Mm.
And you need to have that self-belief. And for that, I think that self-awareness, self-development, that focus on your own well-being is very important. Put on your own oxygen mask first, and I
Correct.
think that is very important. So this self-belief, the confidence, that's half the battle, and perhaps more than half the battle won.
Mm.
I think the second thing I do believe very strongly in is value creation. I do believe that one should focus on value creation for other people, and this I have as a core belief that I work on. The third thing is an ongoing learning. I
Mm.
think we gone are the times when we used to have education that ends with university, and then we start our careers, and then we have a long career, then we retire. As you are proving to the world, you can have many careers. One person can have many careers
Correct.
and many manifestations and avatars. So this is the kind of thing that I do believe in. I believe in ongoing learning, and something that that we can do beyond what we are doing today. So constantly pushing boundaries. So self-belief, value creation, and ongoing learning.
Amazing. I have time for two more questions. My next question is for the many people who will listen to us. What would your advice be to a young individual starting off on her or his journey in the corporate world or as an entrepreneur?
I think, Ashutosh, my advice would be learn as much as you can about yourself. You cannot lead other people unless you lead yourself. And so focus on leading yourself. Obsess over what you can learn. And in terms of this, I have one further piece of advice, which is do not focus on your weaknesses. Hammering away at your weaknesses is not the way to get results. I think to shore up your strengths, to build on your strengths and focus entirely on your strengths is going to build your confidence, is going to build your capability. So to all young leaders, focus on your strengths, get to know yourself and lead yourself.
Fabulous. And my last question to you, and this is again something that you would be able to share with us because you've lived across and done so many different things. Based on your amazing experience, what would you say are 3 lessons we would like our viewers and listeners to take away from your journey and from our conversation?
I think the first one would be rock the boat.
Okay.
Don't take the status quo as something to be gone along with. Rock the boat, have the courage. And I have, in my experience, I do believe in those 20 seconds of mad courage that make everything happen. I learned that at that senior leadership table in my first corporate job, that those 20 seconds of mad courage where you say yes to something that you believe, oh my God, how am I going to do this? But in those 20 seconds of madness and mad courage, you say, I can do it. You watch yourself rise to that challenge after that. So rock the boat, don't be afraid, and be ready for that, for the moment where you'll be faced with those decisions. The second, I think, would be chase value, not money. I think throughout my consulting career, I have learned this. Just chase value, create value. Where you create value, money and everything else follows.
Yep.
And that will come to you. But I think chasing value most important. And lastly, I would say be a lifelong unlearner.
Okay.
I think that is a very, very important thing. Unlearning is critical. And so I would say rock the boat, believe in yourself, chase value, not money, and be a lifelong unlearner.
Wow. Sapna, on that note, thank you so much for speaking to me. I remember when we were studying marketing, we were always told, don't rock the boat. And you're telling everyone to rock the boat. And what you're saying is chase value. And I'm assuming since you coach startups, you're saying don't chase valuation, but chase value. There's a big difference between that. And your third one is be a lifelong unlearner, which is really a strong message. Don't keep on saying this is how it happens here. Unlearn and keep learning again. Thank you so much for speaking to me about your incredible journey, about all the work that you are doing. Thank you again, and good luck to you.
Thank you so much for having me, Ashutosh. It was a privilege to be on your podcast. Thanks again.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.